Good afternoon to you from Wilmington, North Carolina. I am Mark Sudduth, and this is a look at what's going on with the weather here as we get ready for a major travel nightmare coming up as we approach Christmas. It is December 21st, 2022. Thanks for joining me. I don't have much good news for you. Look at that map. Look at the map there as part of the title card, the thumbnail graphic. Brutal coming up for travel, for just general bad weather for pretty much everywhere east of the Rockies. Yeah, we got to deal with it, and we'll talk about that as well as a look at the tropics, some things I'm watching as we look ahead to 2023, and some current things going on in the tropics in the southern hemisphere where it is summer. Of course, today is the first day of winter for the northern hemisphere, the first day of summer in the southern hemisphere. All right? Let's take a look at what's going on out there. I'm also going to show you a video clip from where I've been recently. I have been a busy person these last 7 to 8 weeks or so. Not right now, though. I'm taking it easy. I'm not traveling out into that patchwork there. Look at that. All of those colors. What do those mean? It means that winter is here. You know that meme that we see often on the internet? Winter is coming. I guess that's from Game of Thrones, where the original image came from. It's been tossed around probably billions of times over the years across the internet. Well, winter is here. Winter is coming for the south and elsewhere. Look at those colors. We have everything from wind chill advisories to blizzard warnings to snow squall, lake effect flood warnings, lake effect snow, frost and freeze advisories, winter storm warnings, wind warnings, you name it. The only thing that's missing, thank goodness, because there's not enough warm air. That's pretty much a scarcity right now. No thunderstorm watches or warnings. A little bit of convective activity for parts of the east and south, maybe eastern North Carolina and parts of South Florida, somewhere around there. But otherwise, at least severe weather in terms of convective activity is going to be pretty close to zero. But this is a severe outbreak of cold air. In some areas, it's going to be historic. It's been a long time since we have seen air this cold coming down into the lower 48. So all these different watches and warnings that you see there, that's important because a lot of people are traveling. Christmas is coming up this weekend. And if you're trying to get on a plane over the next few days, man, I'm telling you what, my heart is with you. And you're going to have to be patient, maybe even make some additional plans to rent a vehicle, have somebody come pick you up. You know that movie? It's a Thanksgiving movie. I think it's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. This is kind of like that. You know, you're going to have to probably get very resourceful here. In all seriousness, though, if you're traveling, you know people that are traveling, this is the time to be very patient, be ahead of the schedule if you can, and just try to take a deep breath and just get through it, because it is going to be a very, very stressful time as people try to get around the country. And you know what? You might be in Phoenix trying to travel somewhere and think, man, that all of Arizona's blank. There's nothing going on in Arizona or even most of California, maybe some fog or something. Why are my flights getting disrupted? Well, it's everything east of the Rockies. It is a ripple effect. Everything's connected in the world of weather. And so Denver all the way over to JFK, south to Atlanta, Charlotte, even Orlando, New Orleans, your major areas, Atlanta, Chicago, O'Hare, you name it. Lots and lots of travel problems coming up. So just be patient. Easy for me to say, sitting here in the comfort of my office. I know that. But recently, I got a little bit of a taste of it. I was in South Dakota for the blizzard that they just had up there last week. A week ago today, I was out there. Tuesday and Wednesday were the two big days out there. Wednesday was my day to escape from South Dakota and get down to Denver to catch a plane on Thursday of last week to go meet my family in Florida. We had a family vacation this past weekend. All 7 of my children, a couple of their significant others joining them. There was 11 of us, and I made it. We all made it. That's a miracle when you consider how many people had to get there. My daughter and her boyfriend had to fly from Raleigh. That almost got screwed up. My flight got delayed out of Denver. I had to catch another flight from another airline. And that's nothing compared to what's coming up with this mess right here. But let me show you real quick, get rid of me. I want to show you some video. This is what we talk about when we talk about a ground blizzard. This is some video from a GoPro that I put on my dashboard of my rental We don't need to hear the audio. Let's just kill that. This is highway, who knows what it is. It's somewhere in Wyoming. I don't remember what highway it is, but it's snowing. Yes, light to moderate snow, but the snow that was already on the ground was blowing across at about 25 to 30. That's just 25 to 30 miles per hour. That's nothing compared to what's coming now. 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind. And this is what that looked like just a few days ago up in Wyoming as I was trying to travel, again, from Rapid City down to Denver. That's your ground blizzard. I'm going maybe 35 miles per hour at best. There were times when the visibility would drop to zero and I had to basically stop. And it's dangerous, and I'm lucky I didn't have any problems. I got stuck once up in the Badlands. I was able to at least rock myself out. Luckily, I have driven in a lot of winter weather, so I am no stranger to it. But it was hairy. I'm going to tell you what, that was close. And I almost didn't make my way back to Denver. A couple of times they closed the roads, the interstates there. Interstate 25 got closed. If I had been 30 seconds later, they put these guard things down like at a railroad crossing, I wouldn't have made it past Cheyenne. I'd have had to spend the night Wednesday night and really be sweating it last week to get to my flight. But this is what it looks like there out on the Great Plains. It's remarkable. That's no question. It was really amazing as a weather geek. I found this to be extremely interesting. And it's something like when I got introduced to lake effect snow back a few years ago. I think it was 2020. I went up there for the first time. That's a phenomenon that is just incredible to see in person when you get those big lake effect bands. These ground blizzards up here, I learned a lot. And I want to thank a good friend of mine, Brent, had to think of his name because we have Brent. It was Brant and Brent. Brant Beckman up there. He's the chief at the NBC station in Rapid City. He gave me a tutorial over the phone when I was traveling up there last week. But this is what it looks like. And boy, Brant has got his work cut out for him, as do all of the people up there trying to deal with this. I mean, this is just, imagine this for hours and hours. And for them in the high plains, days and days of this on end. And in fact, right now, I'm going to show you a tweet in just a minute. There's a snow squall coming through some of the same areas that I was just in. Right there, those purples, snow squall warning in southwest South Dakota. All right, satellite. This is what it looks like. This is really, really interesting. Look at this up here. That is cold air, not cloud cover. Yes, there are some clouds in there, but that's cold air being picked up by the satellite sensors. This is an infrared satellite, so it's picking up heat or the lack thereof, and that is the bitterly cold air that is coming down out of Canada. The jet stream is oriented just so that we're going to get this northwest flow coming in from the northwest. And boy, it is going to be very, very cold behind this. Here are your clouds through here, if I can draw on it. And yes, there are some snow squalls starting to develop. The overall cyclone setting up here. That trough will open the door and very cold, dense air. When the air is cold and piled up like this, it's very thick, so to speak. Not thick enough to where you can pick it up, of course, but those molecules are really scrunched together, so the air kind of oozes out, and you can even see that on some animations. It's very thick, so to speak, and it kind of spreads like molasses across a tabletop, draining down into the lower 48, and the Rockies help to block it from getting to the west too much. Sometimes it filters in through some of those valleys and even the Front Range. And the areas like Denver. Denver's going to be bitterly cold, but then it spills east, makes it all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Advection, the lateral movement of that cold air. We're going to see some very, very bitter temperatures all the way down to the I-10 corridor and even into the peninsula of Florida, clearing South Florida. Iguanas shall fall. They will. They get cold. They get stunned. They're not dead. It's just an evolutionary thing, and they let go and they fall, and they just need to warm back up again. So this is what it looks like here. There's that boundary, the Arctic boundary coming in. Look at these temperatures here, forecast temperatures right about now. This is valid, roughly now. Minus 13, minus 19, minus 22, minus 25. Whew! I mean, wow, look at these negative temperatures already here in the Dakotas all the way down into Nebraska. Yikes, just a nasty, nasty area of cold air, giant piece of Arctic air, polar air moving in, but look at how it spreads out like that, draining down into the lower 48, so that by Christmas Eve, Friday night into Saturday, much of the country below freezing. The isotherm, the line of Incal temperature right there, there's your 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius right there. Most of the lower 48, by Friday night, most of the lower 48 will be below freezing. That is a lot of energy that'll be needed to keep people warm, and a lot of problems with people that are exposed. Just wow. And then look at this, the heart of the Arctic air, the polar air right here, negative 20s up here in the Dakotas. Oh, I mean, I was out there and it was really interesting, but I don't know about that. That's getting to my limit there. Oh my goodness gracious. But it comes in and it reaches down. This is by Saturday morning, Christmas Eve morning, 32 degrees. If you're going to Orlando for any of the parks, first of all, good luck with the crowds. Second of all, have fun with it being in the 30s and 40s for most of the day. No, thank you. And the wind will be howling behind this system. Lots of northwest flow coming in, very strong and gusty winds all the way down to Florida. Cold even into southeast Florida. By their standards, it's cold. Wow, just an incredibly impactful system that comes on in. And then it starts to moderate here by a week's time as we get towards the end of the year. Not quite as bad, certainly. We lose a lot of the negative, the below zero temperatures. Still cold in the east as the air is kind of trapped in and around the vicinity of the Appalachians. And then, just a little bit of good news for you, it's not all bad. As we approach New Year's and into the first part of 2023, the pattern is going to change. It's going to become less longitudinal, that's what I call it, where the flow is kind of south or north. I wish it was south to north. That's coming. We get that in the spring and summer. Instead of it being north to south, it'll be more zonal from west to east, and we will have modified Pacific air coming in. But until then, it is going to be very, very, very cold. Just a couple things I want to point out, though. I want to go to some regional areas here. Let's go to the southeastern U.S. Let's look at Florida. We have a lot of people that watch my videos down in Florida. And let's back this up to see when the cold air gets in there. So there it is. There's the sharp edge to the front right there. This is Thursday night into Friday. There's the sharp edge to the front. Florida, the peninsula, still enjoying the 60s and 70s. Hang on to it while you can, because look what's coming. Look what happens here. Get rid of me so we can focus on the temps here. The Arctic front comes in. And so as we get into the day Friday, strong northwest winds will usher in that very cold air. So Friday night into Saturday, yes, a hard freeze makes it down into the peninsula of Florida. Let's back that up. That's Saturday morning. And then again, Sunday morning, another hard freeze deep into Florida there. Temperatures all the way down past areas that were impacted by Ian will be in the 40s and 30s, upper 30s to low 40s. So people that are still dealing with maybe living in shelters outside their homes, temporary, not well insulated housing. Seriously, this is a problem. I know Florida's the Sunshine State. People go down there during the winter, the snowbirds, but the aftermath of Ian, especially, and even to some extent Nicole, if anybody got displaced, especially from some of these condos up here near Daytona, and they might be in some area, a trailer or something that just doesn't have the best insulation. This is going to be a problem here. And for growers, people dealing with agriculture, plants, tender vegetation. I know some of our supporters that are down there, very keen and interested in the cold weather and how that can impact them. It does come and go. It's fairly short-lived, a couple of days of it. And then it does start to warm up next week, as you can see from there. All right, let's go back to the main model page here, and let's look at it from the precip perspective. I'm just going to run this out and let it play. Look at that Arctic front dip in. It does cause a big-time mid-latitude cyclone there. Pressures get down into the 960s. Look at those isobars. Are you kidding me? That is incredible. That northwest flow. Oh my goodness, southeast Canada, you're going to get in on all this. The northeast, not a typical coastal tracker. No, not an I-95 mauler or whatever you want to call it, but the impacts to the northeast from the Great Lakes all the way down into portions of the Ohio Valley, across the Appalachians. Wow, this is going to be big time. Back it up a little bit. Look at what happens there. That storm system really comes together quickly. 1,009 millibars bombing out due to temperature differences in the atmosphere to the 960s. Holy smokes, that is incredible. The lake effect machine will crank up Buffalo, Watertown, probably even Syracuse, Rochester getting in on this. Wow, just incredible. I mean, this really is going to be a very impactful, disruptive, lethal in some situations storm system impacting a lot of people, our commerce, our travel, all of it really going to get hammered over the next few days. So again, I emphasize, if you're traveling by plane especially, it is going to potentially be, I think it's almost a certainty, very, very challenging pretty much anywhere in the lower 48, the United States here, the contiguous United States, Hawaii and Alaska too. Might as well throw all 50 states in. You're flying anywhere. The ripple effect is going to be substantial. And, you know, again, I just got to emphasize, you've got to take this very seriously. If you can rent something, you can get somebody to pick you up, you can drive, take a train, I don't know. Delay it a few days. Look, Christmas is very, very important to a lot of people. I get that. They want to travel. They need to travel. A great time to be with family. I was with my family last weekend. It's important. I get it. But it is going to be extremely challenging in the days ahead. So do that. Take a deep breath and relax if you can. Catch up on, you know, your favorite streaming show while you're at the airport or whatever. And seriously, bring sleeping bags or something, a pillow at least, if you can bring that with you. I mean, if the airports were to just give out nice pillows, that would be a big help. Hint, hint, airports, you know, make it so people can at least sleep and pass the time. I don't know. All right, just scanning through what people are talking about on Twitter. Fox Weather, I will be working with them for the next 3 years. Yes. Now, there's an announcement for you. Just signed a contract with them the other day. 3 years I'll be partnering with Fox Weather. Very excited about that. And here's what they are talking about. They're working with Tom Nizzle. You know, he is winter. He's the winter guru, right? He is the Brian Norcross for hurricanes, right? Brian is. Tom is for winter. All the different things going on across the country. You can just see it here in Fox Weather's feed. And wow, just dangerously cold. And this is not hyperbolic, folks. This is not for ratings or for hype or for views. It is true. It is absolutely true what's happening here. The weather sometimes writes its own headline, and headlines plural. And there you go. I mean, look at this out of Buffalo. This is as real as it gets here, right? This is right from the Weather Service, a lakeshore flood warning. Why? Because the winds are going to be howling across the fetch, the long fetch of the lakes here, and that'll pile up the water, very similar to storm surge on the eastern side, the downwind side, the leeward side of these lakes. Be ready for that. And then in addition to all of that, you're going to have the lake effect snow machine really cranking up across this area. And like I said, I'm sitting this one out. I got to rest a little bit. I've been going nonstop, honestly, since Ian, with very little time in between. And even Mark, the weather lover, needs to take a little bit of time off, family time. Projects, too. I'm working on all kinds of projects, trying to edit videos, do productions for our patrons, and just a lot to do. I'm thinking, all right, let me just relax a couple weeks, let this storm come and go, and we'll resume traveling for storms again in January. But this kind of stuff here, you know, the lake effect machine really cranking up, maybe 3 to 4 feet in some of the favored locations. You folks up there, you know how those bands can get going, and that's going to really be a problem. And then the lake effect storm surge is just an interesting way to put it, I guess. The lake effect flood warning, Lakes Erie and Ontario, very, very impactful there. It's going to be bitter cold, so you're going to get that spray. Oh, just wow. Very, very big, impactful storm. So again, alluding to what I was talking about in this video here that I was showing you, that was Wyoming. This, again, talking about Brant here, Brant Beckman over at KNBN in Rapid City. Brant was with Greg and me and my colleague Mike during Hurricane Sally way back in 2020. That's when I met Brant in person. Greg Nordstrom is one of our colleagues. Greg taught Brant, and they are good friends. I got to know Brant during Sally, and then again he consulted with me to catch me up on the local geography and how the Black Hills magic does its thing, and just how it is up there in the Dakotas. Box Elder, I was right there. I know that Love's Travel Center well. I remember seeing it. This is a tweet here recently, not from Brant. Brant retweeted it. This is from Evan. Evan is a photographer, videographer, and weather geek, just to point out who Evan is. But look at this. This is what it's like up there. And, almost zero visibility. That's the snow squall warning in that area. So this is real. This is the real deal here. Where happened to my stuff? I already went over the forecast. That's good. All right. Now, let's move on. We're done with lower 48 weather. Let's move on to tropical stuff. I mean, hey, hurricane season still many, many months away. But even now in December, the first day of winter here, astronomical winter, we do look ahead to see what might shape next year's tropical cyclone season for the Western Hemisphere, right? In the North Atlantic, the Eastern Pacific. And, of course, one of the big drivers in the whole pattern and how we look at things are sea surface temperatures. And the couple of things that I will be watching, I've been watching for many, many, many years. And those of you that have followed my videos over the years, number one is the state of the ENSO, or El Nino Southern Oscillation. And we call that ENSO, ENSO. Right now, still in La Nina, but it is gradually changing over time. And we'll see where that goes. And then, of course, the state of the Atlantic. How warm is the tropical Atlantic? And even the high latitudes. We saw in 2022, if the high latitudes, way up high north of like 30, 40 north latitude, if the high latitude ocean waters are very, very warm relative to average, you kind of distort the pattern. So there's a lot to keep up with here in the off season. But the two main drivers, I'll be watching the Atlantic and how those sea surface temperatures evolve, and of course the tropical equatorial region of the Pacific down here, right? And so these are the anomalies, your departures from average right now. Well, it's always a day behind. This is yesterday, the 20th. Couple things to note. For now, the Gulf is way, way above normal. Now, this is going to change because we're going to get that cold air coming down, and that's really going to mix things up. So we're going to see a dent in this. And then we'll have to see how much it rebounds as we get into the first part of next year. The Western Atlantic, especially the Northwest Atlantic, remains extremely warm compared to the long-term average. So that's interesting to see. We'll see how this plays out over the coming months. This warm Gulf will impact lower 48 weather when you have storm systems come through, because you will pull up moisture from the Gulf and bring it into the lower 48. So we'll watch that beyond just what could impact next year's hurricane season. One of the things that we will be watching together once a week, we'll look at this, and that is the Southern Oscillation Index, the SOI. This is calculated from pressure differences between Tahiti, probably a lovely area this time of year, and Darwin in Australia, where of course it is the first day of summer down there. And the SOI basically tells me how the pressure pattern is behaving over the tropical Pacific. It is a very simple way for me to keep up with it, and that is when the SOI is high, we're typically in a La Nina. When the SOI is low, we typically head towards El Nino. And it's done every day from the Bureau of Meteorology, these calculations. We have the 30-day average sitting at 12.36, which is higher than where we were in November. We came down a lot in November, but we're higher than that by about 8 points. So we'll see where we end up for December. The 90-day average is very healthy, a very healthy 13. Typically when this gets close to zero, and it's just an index, like the stock market, you understand? And you have highs and lows in your neutral area. So right now the 90-day is sitting at 13. That is very, very respectable. Usually at about -5, -7 around there. for your long-term 30, 90-day averages, then you start shifting the pressure pattern so that you can foster an El Nino event. We are far from that right now, and today's contributor is a very respectful and healthy 37.88. So we'll watch this, like I said, from week to week and see how the SOI behaves as we end 22 and go into 23. We will also watch the CFS, the Climate Forecast System. It did a very good job with the INSO predictions for 2022. We looked, you can go back, look at my video from around this time last year, January of the early part of this year. February, we watched this. It never really showed an El Nino coming, and we didn't have an El Nino in 2022. Now, for next year, it is generally suggesting by April, we crack that neutral and go above normal or average as we get into spring and summer. Maybe reaching El Nino thresholds, which is about 0.5 degrees Celsius, possibly by July, maybe a little bit before. But these blue lines that you see here, those are your most recent output ensemble members, and there are more and more of those that are a little less warm, if that makes sense. So the latest 8 forecast members, these blue guys right here, see that? More and more of those are on the south side, or the lower side, as we say, of that warming trend. So we'll see. Maybe we get to warm neutral and not a full El Nino for next year's hurricane season. We'll see. It's still so far away, but the climate forecast system generally does, lately, a pretty good job at tracking the INSO conditions, and we'll revisit this about every week or so. All right, it is tropical cyclone season somewhere, all the time, and in the southern hemisphere. Speaking of that, we do have a couple of systems. We do have a cyclone. I guess you would pronounce that Darian, D-A-R-I-A-N. No, it's not Dorian, and it's not misspelled. It is Darian. In the southern hemisphere, it is forecast to track well away from any land, stay away from land, and maybe a couple of islands nearby, but not going to impact Australia or anywhere else. But this next system, an invest area here, and it's southern hemisphere invest area 90. This is what some of the guidance looks like. Yep, this one is headed right into Australia, probably strengthening over time. I think I can hit the back button. We can look at intensity guidance. Most of the intensity guidance, well, it's kind of flat, but it is supposed to strengthen. I saw somewhere, come on now. I feel like I've been punked here. I did see where it is forecast to strengthen, but a lot of these different global models, I guess, are just not picking up on that. And I do not know, again, this is out of my realm. I do not go to the southern hemisphere, obviously. But strengthening into a tropical storm, yeah, I think that's likely. And I didn't say it's going to strengthen into like a strong cyclone or anything, but a tropical storm, nevertheless, as we would call it here in the western hemisphere, you know, could bring some impacts for our friends down there in Australia. And you can see that here. Maybe, you know what you're looking at? There's Australia, there's the northern coast, right? I'll just kind of outline it for you to the best of my abilities here. Rarely do we look at the southern hemisphere, but it's important. And then here's the disturbance up here that's going to come together and eventually move south into northern Australia. Got to get used to saying that. Watch how this comes together. Yes, the GFS does strengthen it a little bit there, and it does make landfall in northern Australia. All that energy there, yep, that's rainfall. We can back it out. And let's see, what should we look at? Let's look at the mean sea level pressure and 10-meter wind. 995, 991. And yeah, I mean, there we go. I knew I wasn't off on this. 983, that's, you know, in our neck of the woods in the United States, that'd be a hurricane. So yes, this could be a fairly strong cyclone moving into parts of northern Australia. A lot of rain. And remember, the winds blow clockwise around systems in the southern hemisphere. So as this comes in, it's not the typical, you know, it's moving north to south. It's so backwards, isn't it? So anybody sort of on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, I have to think about it, that clockwise flow could drive in a storm surge there. So, you know, just be aware of this. If you got friends and family down in Australia, something interesting to point out as we also look at that kind of stuff for the lower 48. I don't know. This starts to look a little bit more, I don't want to say better, but it certainly is summer here, not so much here. All right? All right, so let me wrap this up, get this online for you. Just reiterating, I think the main point, you're traveling, especially by plane, honestly. Take the chargers with you. You can get those little, whoever, Anchor is who I use. Not a paid endorsement. Anker. That's who we use for, I don't have one nearby. They're all over on the other table charging. But those little, 20,000 milliamps or whatever, 20 amp hours, that'll run your iPhone. Also not a paid endorsement. That'd be great. We're doing just fine with our partners on Patreon, and we don't need endorsements, but nevertheless, your iPhone, your Android, your whatever, right? Charge them. Keep them charged. Keep yourselves busy. Get on that airport Wi-Fi if you need to, because you're going to need it. These next few days, a massive challenge for people trying to travel across the good old U.S. of A. All right? All right. Thanks for joining me. I do appreciate it. No more updates until after Christmas, so hang in there. Get through this stormy pattern, the cold air, and we'll talk again sometime early next week, and certainly before New Year's Eve and all of that. All right? All right. As always, thanks for giving me a piece of your day. I do appreciate it. Hopefully you learned something. It was kind of lengthy today, but we had a lot to go over, and I do appreciate your attention. I am Mark Sudduth, again, in Wilmington, North Carolina. That's my home base. Thanks for watching. We'll talk again after Christmas.